Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you introduce yourself, please, and tell us what the main goals of the PDP4E project are?
Hello, my name is Yod Samuel Martin. I'm the scientific and technical lead of the PDP4E project. PDP4E is short for Methods and Tools for GDPR Compliance through Privacy and Data Protection in Engineering, or in summary, Privacy and Data Protection for Engineers. It's about bringing GDPR into practice, into implementation, translating the GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation, a law that you may be aware of because it's been in the news in recent weeks, about data protection, protection of personal data, and bringing that into engineering terms, because it's quite relevant for engineers. Several engineering publications have recently said that even individual coders will need to be aware and be concerned about this regulation. And what we want to do is to translate this into engineering terms, because the law is there, but let's say it's for lawyers. And okay, there are some nice research results on privacy and data protection, but yet they are again just research results. They are not applicable in a systematic way. There are also some tools that are addressing managers with some nice charts, but they are not addressing the engineering process, because engineers are used to thinking in terms of backlog items, of models, of projects, into engineering terms. So what we basically want to do is to endow engineers with methods and tools that are aligned to their mindset. Not for managers, not for lawyers, but for developers and engineers. We want to introduce the privacy and data protection concepts into the traditional engineering activities. So that's where the method parts goes. And we also want to introduce them into tools that they are already using. So we are not creating new tools for these privacy and data protection issues, but we are expanding existing software engineering tools with new functionalities to deal with privacy and data protection. And finally, we want to create a community of privacy engineers that brings forces from one side, from the traditional privacy engineering community, and on the other hand from existing development communities, such as is the case of Eclipse community. So this is, in summary, the goal is threefold: methods, tools, and community.
So you mean that GDPR is not just a question of lawyers. How does GDPR compliance affect the work of software engineers? Can you give some specific examples? Yeah,
you're right. It's not a question of lawyers. It's a matter of development. So, for instance, the GDPR imposes some obligations on companies, which are called data controllers or data processors. It also brings some new rights to data subjects, to users whose personal data is being handled. And those things are there in the law, but how do they translate, for instance, into specific requirements, into backlog items? So this is something that affects engineers, but which is not currently yet solved. For instance, also the GDPR talks about a set of privacy or data protection principles, such as, for instance, transparency. But again, transparency needs to be translated into requirements. Or minimization, which means that you should only process as little personal data as you can. But what does as little mean? Translated into specific records of a database. Is this record minimized or not? This is an engineering problem. It also talks about accountability principles. So you not only need to abide by the law, but you need to be accountable. You need to be able to demonstrate that you are abiding by it, okay? But which records do I need to gather and to keep in order to demonstrate that accountability? So there's a gap between what the GDPR says and the terms that engineers are used to working with. Those are some examples of them.
Excellent. What is the solution that is proposed by PDP4E?
Well, as I said before, we want to integrate into existing engineering tools new functionalities that help engineers deal with those privacy and data protection issues. We, in particular, are dealing with 4 software engineering, software and system engineering disciplines, and we are adding functionalities to tools that cover those disciplines. One of them is risk management. We are introducing into an existing tool that comes from a previous European project to deal with security risk management. We are introducing privacy and data protection risk management so that you can analyze which privacy threats you are facing, you can analyze your privacy vulnerabilities, and you can have the risk index for those vulnerabilities computed, and finally you can mitigate them with specific privacy enhancing technologies, which are technical solutions for those threats. Then the second discipline we are addressing is requirements management or requirements engineering. We use different approaches. One of them is problem frames, another one is operationalization, and another one is the use of privacy patterns in order to translate the contents of GDPR from the requirements engineering perspective into specific requirements that can be managed and introduced into your requirements management system you are currently using. The third discipline is model-driven engineering. We propose to add to model-driven engineering tools specific functionalities dealing with privacy and data protection. Namely, we want to introduce what's called data inventory, so that any piece of personal data is tagged with a stereotype that tells that it's personal data. We also want to apply some strategies that can help make your models or make your systems more compliant with GDPR by transforming your models. For instance, I talked before about minimization. We plan to transform a model applying minimization strategies to a different model which is more compliant with that minimization principle. But there are also other strategies, for instance, aggregation. You can provide aggregated views of the data which are not revealing specific pieces of personal data of specific individuals. Or there's also a strategy of separation. You can still have your data, but you can have it separated in different silos so that you cannot link the data from one instance of your database with another, from one of those silos with another. For these 2 disciplines, for requirements engineering and for model-driven engineering, model-driven design, we are extending an existing tool, which is Papyrus, which is part of the Eclipse ecosystem. And then there's a fourth discipline for which we are also extending another tool, which is OpenCert. And this is for the discipline of software assurance. OpenCert used to deal with the assurance of safety properties. And it's a quite similar approach to what is needed for privacy and data protection, because we have some regulations we need to abide by. In this case, it's GDPR. In the case of safety, it's safety regulations. Then we have the need to describe the processes that are followed for safety compliance. We need to describe the processes that are followed for privacy and data protection compliance. We need to record evidences. We need to argument from those evidences that the law is being met. So it's nice because it's quite similar to what has been done before in OpenCert, and we are leveraging that work in order to add the privacy and data protection assurance in this case. And these are the 4 main disciplines we are addressing. On top of them, we have 2 demonstration scenarios for 2 sectors that are making strong use of personal data and which are creating novel business models that leverage personal data. These are the smart grid domain and the fintech domain. There's a lot of movement in those industries nowadays, and it relies on the exploitation of personal data. So we think they are 2 good test scenarios in order to demonstrate that you can develop systems more easily with our contributions while respecting personal data and also making a good business case. Finally, we also want to provide a set of knowledge bases and a set of meta models so that they are used by our tools or by other tools that could be created by third parties. And for sure, as I said before, also the community creation aspect, which is key for the survivability of the results of the project.
What is the specific value of the Eclipse Foundation for your project? Does PDP4E relate to the Eclipse ecosystem?
Yes, it does. There are several projects of the Eclipse Foundation, of the Eclipse ecosystem that we are leveraging in PDP4E. The value of Eclipse, it's threefold. On the one hand, or first, it's oriented to dissemination and exploitation. So Eclipse is helping us, the Eclipse Foundation is helping us, as in this event, to disseminate the results of the project. And it's also helping us to ensure a sustained exploitation in the future thanks to the Eclipse ecosystem. Second, the Eclipse Foundation is also helping us to the management of the software project. Not only because it has a lot of experience in management of software projects. In this case, it's a European research project, but the experience of the Eclipse Foundation goes well before they started doing European research projects. First, because of the management of software projects, and second, because of the infrastructure. So we have our repositories, our documentation management systems hosted by the Eclipse Foundation. So it's even an infrastructure support. So I said it's threefold: first, dissemination, exploitation; second, the support of software project management; and the third role that the Eclipse Foundation here has is for requirements capture and validation. It brings invaluable link with the industry because we can directly access developers who are not privacy experts as ourselves and can get their needs, can elicit their requirements, and in the future can provide validation, their feedback in order to validate the project results.
How do you leverage the value of open source in PDP4E?
Yeah. Well, the companies that participate in the PDP4E project are quite active in the open source arena. We have Trialog, which is a French SME. We have CI Technologies, member of Eclipse Foundation Board, which is a large software company. We also have some public institutions quite active in software development, such as CAA Tech, and we have Tecnalia from Spain. They are quite active in the, as I said, in the open source arena. But the role of open source in PDP4E goes beyond these companies because if the project was not open source, these companies might have come up with any business exploitation model through an agreement among them. But it would have prevented us from achieving widespread use of our solutions. So we want to, as I said, provide engineers with methods and tools for privacy and data protection engineering. It would not have been the case if the tools would not have been available with open source freedoms, because we not only want our results to be introduced in our tools, but we would like them to be reused by other projects. Maybe they can reuse just some parts and integrate others. Maybe they can reuse our meta models or knowledge bases and create new tools, or vice versa. They can reuse our tools and create their own proprietary knowledge bases with the knowledge they have amassed at their companies. And all these would be quite difficult to achieve without open source.
How do you see the project evolving after the European research funding is complete?
We have just started the project. It started just a month ago. So it's still a long time until the European funding finishes, but we have planned to create a sort of privacy and data protection alliance, or an alliance for privacy and data protection engineering, so that the sustainability of the project results is ensured. We want to merge the existing communities from both open source development, which is led by the Eclipse Foundation in this case, and the existing community of privacy engineers. There's an initiative by the European Data Protection Supervisor, which is called IPEN, which is the Internet Privacy Engineering Network, and which are gathering indeed this same week in Barcelona. So I'm not there. I'm near, but I'm not there. And they have been active in the recent years trying to promote privacy engineering. So the role of the Eclipse Foundation, with all the amount of developers that are involved in the whole Eclipse ecosystem, and the role of this IPEN community on privacy engineering would be key in order to ensure the sustainability of the project through this kind of alliance for privacy and data protection engineering.
Excellent. So is there anything else you'd like?